Stephen Woolley sent it to me. It was obviously he'd seen the play that Moore had written, and he commissioned the script, and he sent me the script. And when I read it, I couldn't believe it. It was so so wonderfully kind of complex and subtle, and it was very strange because there was a lot of issues that I dealt with in different movies myself. You know, there were stories within stories. People were telling a story. There was stories about stories. There was a constantly shifting narrator. It was set in a kind of a downbeat holiday town in England, not in Ireland. You know, it was obviously some kind of a reinvention of a vampire legend and stuff like that. And I just loved it.
She is an aberration. We are a brotherhood. There are no women amongst us.
Well, I mean, I think it's about people who are condemned to live forever, really, you know. And it's obviously about vampires. They're called something quite different. She calls them Sucrians, or she calls them, in a way I wanted to avoid the word vampire in the movie as a whole, because they don't obey any of the traditional kind of rules of the vampire genre. You know, they can go out in the sunlight, they don't have teeth. I mean, I asked, initially Mora they executed their killings with a long, thin knife, you know, and I came up with the idea of their thumbnail growing when they felt hungry, you know, so they're kind of different creatures than the traditional vampires. I mean, the most delightful thing in the script really was the fact that it was a mother and daughter who were mother and daughter kind of immortals. And because they were turned into vampires at different stages in their lives, they're like brother and sister, or sister and they're like sisters, you know. So, I mean, that confusion was kind of great, you know, the strange kind of contradiction of characters. Clara is full of sexuality and immediacy and kind of violence, you know, and protective violence, you know, and Eleanor is far more cerebral and far more kind of guilt-ridden, you know. They're a bit like Louis and Lestat and Interview with the Vampire in a strange way, you know, but that dynamic was absolutely wonderful. The script asked the question, I thought in a very real way, is why are people in the contemporary world in 2011, why are they so interested in vampires, you know? And it's, I mean, it's because it's that whole yearning for some kind of life other than the real world that we live in, you know? And, you know, the script had that wonderful, the story itself had that wonderful contrast between the 18th century and the present, and, you know, that wonderful sense of living in a kind of incredibly drab reality, and there being a possibility of a far more kind of eternal or dynamic life out there. I mean, initially in the script, and I think in the play, they were to get turned into this creature. You went to somewhere in Asia Minor, you know, and it was connected with, I mean, Moore had gone back to the earliest, you know, the earliest 18th, you know, the earliest evidence of vampire stuff in English fiction and literature, which is, you know, Byron and Polidori and stuff like that. That's why she calls them Lord Riven and Darvel. Those names are taken from the Polidori story. And, you know, Byron spent time in Greece, and he was obsessed with the Isles of Greece and stuff like that. So it was, in the Byronic version of the legend, it was an encounter between the west of the 18th century and some ancient Grecian thing, you know. And for various reasons, we went to Morocco and looked at locations, and they didn't turn out to be right. And I began to do a bit of research, and you know, there was this wonderful kind of confluence of Irish legends and vampiric kind of lore, you know. Don't know whether it's true or not, you know, but I mean, obviously Bram Stoker grew up in Fairview, and I mean, they were kind of an Irish invention, really. They were an invention of the Irish Gothic tradition in a strange way, you know. So we decided we began to explore that stuff, and it became rich in a totally different way, you know.
Only those prepared to die will find eternal life.
I love imaginary beings, and I love imaginary creatures, and I love imaginary environments, you know. And I love to set and to photograph things in a situation that is apparently real, you know what I mean, but that has all this kind of subterranean stuff going on. And this script gave such opportunity to do that I just leapt on it really, and I really wanted to see those elements, you know, brought to the forefront, you know. There seems to be something about vampires that have this smell of eternity about them, this smell of kind of what people miss from religion about them. They also kind of have this assumed elegance. I just think people's interest in vampire movies it's the same as their interest in mythology in general, you know. If the audience had the appetite to see a movie about a minotaur or Pan or, you know, or kind of the Irish kind of fairy tradition or something like that. It's all the same need to. It's all the same kind of dissatisfaction with the real world, you know, because people basically hate reality. They want anything other than reality, I think, you know.
Do we steal time?
We buy it with blood.